Dark Souls is a series that needs no introduction. This is a franchise that has saved more lives than the Hotline. These are the only games where you can discover more about yourself while fighting big titty spiders. The demand for the dark fantasy struggle has skyrocketed, calling for the creation of a new subgenre called Soulslikes. These are games ranging from crabs to bugs to even Jedis. They are most notably signified by their extreme difficulty, looting systems, and best of all, epic boss fights. Many developers have tried and failed at replicating the magic From Software cooks up with. However, every now and then we get a diamond in the rough. Lies of P is a Souls-like that combines the unforgiving combat of Dark Souls with puppets? Inspired by the adventures of Pinocchio, Lies of P aims to create a vast, fictional world filled with a heavy dose of that Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 magic. This is a Souls-like that should have failed, but didn't. And today, we're gonna go over why it not only succeeded, but can go round for round with the best in the whole Souls-like series. Welcome to... wait a minute. Whoa, that's better. Welcome to Lies of P. We awake in a train car, seemingly brought to life by a butterfly. A woman named Sophia calls out to us with instructions to go to Krot Hotel, while our mechanical sidekick Gemini helps us stay focused. But at the end of this train car, we are presented with our first of many choices. These games are well known for their character customizer. It's the main reason why gamers have 12 hours played before even stepping foot into the world. So much time can be spent crafting a character tailored to your dashing good looks. Lies of P is a little different though. You already come with a character named P, and your choice comes down to 3 different classes: Dexterity, Strength, and Balanced. After your choice is made, the game opens up to its tutorial level, Krot Train Station. It's here where we learn the basics of combat and the first of many similarities in the Souls genre. Estus flasks are now called pulse cells, stargazers are your bonfire save points, weapon arts have been replaced by fable arts, ergo is your currency instead of souls, and the upgrade system, while still somewhat vague, functions pretty much the same, and you still gotta go talk to a mysterious lady, while also having the additional skill tree used with quartz. Dodging, parrying, blocking, it all shares the same DNA with the Souls games, but with a few key differences that make it truly unique. First, the weapon assembly system. All weapons, besides boss weapons, are made up of a blade and a handle. And what's so great is you can swap them out and mix and match to your heart's desire. The blade determines your fable art, guard capabilities, and base damage, while the handle affects the moveset and weapon scaling. This system is absolutely perfect. It allows you to not feel like you're being punished for using a new weapon. All you have to do is trade out the blade or the handle, and it'll remain upgraded, and you can use it however long you want, really. Just switch out the handle and the blade and you have a completely new weapon in your arsenal. And there's like, I think 500 or over 500 different types of weapons you can get. It's unreal. Next, the Legion Arm. The Legion Arm is a special equipment that P can use, and it's, well, attached to his arm. From grappling hooks to dragon's breath to throwing out acid, there are so many different ways you can use your abilities. It does have a limit on your runs, but there is an upgrade later on that allows you to put 2 on at once. The grappling hook was my favorite because it allowed you to pick apart groups of enemies really easily. You could kind of lock onto one of them, pull it in, take them out, and then you can take out the horde. Or you can just keep doing that ever so slowly. It allowed me to kind of play a little bit more methodically, and that's something that I really liked, is that I could tailor the grappling hook or the Legion Arm to whatever I wanted. Once you get the grappling hook fully upgraded, you do this crazy ass thing where you go into the enemy instead, and then you jump up and then you land for some massive damage. It caused for some awesome moments, and granted, you can only use it like 2 or 3 times per run because it takes out a lot of its health, but still, worth it. There's no telling what kind of double whammies you can come up with when you've got 2 on at once. Now for my absolutely favorite aspect the perfect guard. The perfect guard is what makes Lies of P just so satisfying to play. Parrying hit after hit against a boss not only negates damage, but it barely takes any stamina and also allows you the chance to break the boss's weapon. It can also cause a stagger effect that opens up a short window for a fatal attack that does massive amounts of damage. You want that fatal attack, let me tell you. Just wait until the big glowing red scratchy mark pulls up. They'll do a little Tim Tebow action. You go up to it and you wham them and you just go to town. It's awesome. After learning the basic mechanics of the world, our skills are tested with the first boss fight, the Parade Master. Let's go check it out. Boss fights are a staple in Souls game, and Lies of P has no shortage of them. From buffed regular enemies to mini bosses to full-on two-phasers. You're not missing out here. This game just has a little bit of everything. And let me just say this, just because it's a Souls-like does not make it any easier. Oh no, Lies of P is quite honestly one of the hardest Souls-like or Souls games I've ever played. Lexacia, or Lexacia, whatever the hell her name is, in that gank fight with the Rabbit Brotherhood, eat a dick. Eat it. Lies of P not only has boss fights, but it builds upon boss fights and gives you a unique experience from any of the other Souls-likes I've ever played. To start, all bosses have an unblockable move that you either have to run away from, dodge, or perfect guard. You can't block these, and the way you know it's coming is when the boss starts glowing red. That's how you know either get out of town or pucker up and get ready. Most of the time they'll whip this out at the end of a moveset to kind of throw you off, or sometimes they'll just do it. It's kind of random, but as you fight a boss a certain amount of times, you'll start to learn it. And let me tell you, perfect guarding and parrying this move, so satisfying, so satisfying. These boss fights also add a depth of resource management with the grindstone. From hitting enemies to blocking to even parrying, every weapon has a health bar, and it needs to be monitored or it's gonna get really angry and get all red and get all flaccid and stop working, and you're not gonna have a good time, trust me. This process adds a whole new layer to boss fights, and it kind of happens more so later as the boss fights get longer, but at certain points you're gonna have to choose between healing yourself or healing your weapon, and that becomes a whole song and dance, especially when you're trying to get damage in. So pick your poison, I guess. Sometimes you try to do both. You try to heal and you try to heal your weapon, and then you get screwed in the process. It happens way too many times. Bosses also have a kind of hidden stagger bar. If you hit them or parry them enough times, their health bar will start glowing white. From there, if you land a heavy attack or you spam your Fable art, you can put them in the staggered state, as they say. Or actually, it's called groggy state, I think technically, like on the Lies of P wiki, but stagger state, groggy state, whatever. And then those three little scratchy marks come up, and that's where you can do your massive damage again. The devs also did some cheese where if you put a boss down in a stagger state, and it's only certain ones, they'll do one final moveset to throw you off or get damage off on you. And let me tell you, it is so annoying because when you get a boss down in the stagger state or the groggy state, you have 5 to 10 seconds to kind of catch your breath, to kind of chill for a second, see how you're doing, and then you can go up to them and get your damage off. But a couple of them hit you first. Like, for example, Lexacia does that. She's got this like electric bomb that goes off. And so, especially in that boss fight, getting her down in a groggy state is a triumph in itself. And then you're not punished for it, but you're tested for it. So watch your back and don't get too antsy because they'll get you. Like I said, this game is hard. One of my favorite features, and it's not just with boss fights, but once you run out of pulse cells, you can actually attack and do damage and earn one of them back. And you can do that an infinite amount of times. It kind of fixes this problem in Dark Souls where, like, let's say you're fighting a two-phaser and you've got like 3 Estus flasks left and you're like, well, I'm kind of screwed. I might as well just end this run and retry again. This whole idea completely fixes that. And I know it's a skill issue, but I love it. I don't care. I don't care. It rewards your aggression and opening up punishable windows, and I absolutely love that. It's not like you can just sit back and parry or block and you'll earn the health back. You have to attack. Such a smart thing. Love that. After defeating our first boss, we make our way to the front door of Krot Hotel, and we're asked one simple question.
Who are you? Grand Covenant's fourth law. A puppet cannot lie.
But if I'm a puppet, how come I can lie? More on that later, I promise. Krot Hotel is elegant, imposing, and absolutely stunning. This feels like our home, a safe space away from the chaos of the world. A place where we can come see the friends we've made along the way. The vibes in Krot Hotel are immaculate. You can get hissed by a cat, try to play the piano poorly, and even change the music with the collectible vinyls. Krot Hotel is kind of the antithesis of the Dark Souls safe spaces. It's not that they aren't these quiet, nostalgic places of rest, but I can't help but feel like the Dark Souls ones are a lot less hopeful. They're mostly dark, bleak, and kind of uninviting. You know, the DS2 music in Majula, ooh, slaps. But I can't help but feel like, not that I don't belong, but there's a sense of unease in all of those from Dark Souls 1 to 3 that I don't get at Krot Hotel. They don't necessarily feel safe to me, and maybe that's the point, but Krot Hotel feels pretty safe, I would say. Also, the simple fact that it's indoors and not outside, I think makes a huge deal to me as well. Like, we can literally physically close ourselves off to the outside world. We don't even have to see it or think about it. Dark Souls is more of a head-on collision with despair and the world surrounding you. But Krot Hotel is lying to you. There really is no safe place in this world, but maybe, just for now, it can be. After walking around and meeting the inhabitants of the hotel, we learn that Geppetto is hiding somewhere deep within the city, and it's our job to head out and find him. This is where we get our first real taste of the world in front of us and the adventure that awaits. Exploration is a huge selling point in Souls games. Finding loot, secret passages, and different enemy types is what keeps us all engaged. But Lies of P has a very linear experience mixed with open areas. You'll always end up in the same place, but the way that you get there can vary from playthrough to playthrough. To many, this is a huge red flag. Absolutely not. We don't want a linear experience. And to that I tell you, what do you think of Dark Souls 3? Oh, you don't like it? Oh, well, I do. The linearity of this game didn't bother me at all, especially with how unique and challenging each area really is. There are so many different areas to explore, from the city grounds to a crumbling castle to a rundown cathedral. One of my favorite areas was a puppet junkyard, where you have to navigate around piles and piles of puppet corpses. It's pretty dark. And also, once you make it to the barren swamp, which is an area within the puppet junkyard, you meet my favorite puppet of them all, the one that wants to learn emotions. So you literally, as you learn emotions yourself, you emote on his ass, and in turn, he'll give you a collectible vinyl. It's incredible. It's incredible. But there also is an optional boss called the Owl Doctor that has an insane backstory. The Doc is a stalker who's in a relationship with the famous world-renowned singer Adelina Corday. And the couple had just bought their first apartment together when the puppet frenzy started. And the Doc, obviously being freaked out, was like, "Hey, Adelina, get back to the apartment, I'm gonna make it a safe house." But she was like, "No, one last performance. I wanna do one last performance." And during that time, the Doc took up a job escorting the alchemists to the cathedral, believing that they were going to find a cure for the refugees. Come to find out, they were doing experiments on these people, and the revelation of that drew him mad. It shattered his sanity and made him want to treat anybody he came across by killing them. We find him in a remote shack in the barren swamp where he ultimately meets his demise after trying to cure P. So yeah, absolutely insane backstory for an optional boss. He's such a tragic little character that believes he's helping people, but his mind has been so warped by the things he's done wrong that he can't help but twist reality. His moveset's pretty cool, but his arena absolutely sucks. Every other time I was slashing or trying to hit him, I was slapping the wall. It was terrible. Dumb area. It's 4 wooden walls and a stripper pole in the middle. Did not like the area, but the character's cool. But point being, the world shines brightest through its optional side characters and random encounters. And the Puppet Junkyard was just one of the many that absolutely surprised me. I'll leave the rest for you to find. Something that I noticed throughout my time with this game is just how vertical a lot of the levels are. It gave the game almost this retro feeling. Like I was saving the princess on top of the castle from the evil empire. Wait, I kind of do that. Like low-key. Huh. Something to think about there. But what it ultimately does is create some incredibly rage-inducing moments. Like this one, for example, in the cathedral. It's got you going straight up and you're balancing on wooden beams, dodging projectiles, ducking under gears. It's cool, but also annoying as hell. And if you fall, a great batch of corrosive ooze is waiting for you at the bottom if you even land your fall. And what I didn't realize is that as you go higher and higher, there's a great big bowl of fire, and if you knock it off, you can, I guess, dissipate the ooze on the ground, and that'll unlock a little area where you can get a chest and get some loot. How wonderful. I didn't notice that immediately, but you know what? I learned eventually. Infuriating, but that's the vibe, that's the energy, and that's why this is the best Souls-like, because of shit like that. The verticality just adds a level of anxiety on top of an already anxiety-ridden and rage-inducing game. And it's wonderful because I'm crazy. Once we make it through the desolate streets of Krat, we find Geppetto hiding in a carriage. We learn about the puppet frenzy and how the world fell, which essentially the puppets turned on the humans in what is now called the puppet frenzy, creating a hellscape, apocalyptic ruin of the once great city known as Krat. We also learn about the petrification disease, an illness that turns flesh to stone, something that Antonia has. The disease apparently spreads from corrupted ergo and infects humans and animals alike. And with that knowledge unlocked, a new enemy type called carcasses emerge. Carcasses are the result of an unfortunate experiment gone wrong. The alchemists were supposedly trying to cure the petrification disease in humans, and instead created something much more horrifying. Acid tentacle monster thing. And they're really fast too. Carcasses are one of the many varieties of enemy you're gonna fight in this game, along with puppets, stalkers, and the alchemists. Puppets are what you'll probably see the most, ranging from spiders to clowns and even house butlers. Everyone in Krat welcomed the mechanical marvels into society, and they assimilated beautifully. But then the puppet frenzy took place, and then butlers were killing a family of 5. Tragic. Just tragic. Stalkers are elite mercenaries and vigilantes who once served as bodyguards for Krat's wealthy elite. Known for their signature animal masks, they were respected and even idolized, especially by the children of Krat. Some of them are cool, and some of them are total dicks, as you'll come to see. You'll just have to decide that for yourself though, I guess. But after the puppet frenzy and the petrification disease, most stalkers either died or went completely rogue, and the few who remain today are divided into 2 different factions. The bastards are said to be the literal bastards of noble-born elites. They are described as deadly fast, and their motto is honor or nothing. The sweepers are more brutal, street smart, and unforgiving, and their motto is we always repay what is owed. Both factions are at complete odds against each other, but they fight pretty much the same. All stalkers have a similar moveset to P. They can heal, dodge, and even wield similar weapons. And in fact, arguably one of the worst fights in the entire game is against a group of stalkers called the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. Screw those MFers, and you have to do it twice. Okay, sorry, I was gonna go on a tangent there, but I'm gonna... Great job, guys, you really got me with the double gank fight. Great job. And finally, the alchemists. These are the humans that performed experiments and tried to stop the petrification disease. However, in a collectible book, you can find that there's a reporter out there who thought something much more malignant was going on. It's called Special Report, Foreigner's Confession. And inside, there's basically a conspiracy that says the alchemists have an ulterior motive with the ergo that they've been mining. Unfortunately, the remainder of this book was destroyed, or else I would have read it to you, and it was also banned for inspiring civil unrest and promoting false information. The fake news, as they say. So, probably nothing. Back at the hotel, we speak with Geppetto again, who suspects Romeo, the king of puppets, is behind the puppet frenzy. So, we're headed to the Estella Opera House to see what kind of tune this king is playing. The palace is beautiful, with red carpets accenting the shiny marbled floors. Pillars of white and gold stand strong on the tall walls. It's beautiful, and also riddled with spider puppets. These things have always creeped me out. And don't underestimate the maze-like structure of this place. I was turned around quite a few times. But ultimately, we make it into the stage area where it looks like they're gonna treat us to a little show. After defeating Romeo, he gives P something that needs to be decoded. So we give that to Vanini to see if he can try and decipher it. More on that later. We meet up with Geppetto again, who suspects the alchemists have invented a cure for the petrification disease. We head to the Grand Exhibition Gallery where we find the alchemists for the first time. And after defeating the boss of the area, Champion Victor, we are finally introduced to the leader of the alchemists, Simon Manus. Simon also explains that ergo is the crystallized form of the human soul that forms after death, and that exposure to that ergo is what caused all of the diseases. And with that, he invites us to his private abode, the Isle of the Alchemists. You know, I'm not really feeling going to some private island right now, not in 2025. I don't think that's the best idea. I think I might pass on that. I love what the man is saying, but holy crap, the interaction of dialogue between Simon and P, oh my god, it is so long for no reason. I feel like I aged 40 years listening to this. But thankfully, the whole game isn't like this. While our first talk with Simon Manus is a long, drawn-out mountain man speech, a lot of the world building and environmental storytelling is told in a much more low-key way. One of the key features in Dark Souls is just a very vague, non-existent plot. And while creating the story for yourself and finding clues through collectibles and books and items is great, I love the way that Liza P just tells a conventional story, because you can have your cake and you can eat it too. The plot isn't simple by any means, but it's pretty straightforward. But you also have the opportunity to learn more about your world with the collectibles that surround you. There's writing on the walls, newspapers, books. There are so many things to read and so many people to greet. It almost feels infinite. One of the best pieces of lore that I found was in the Arch Abbey area. I found a book called Simon Manus's Confession. Not only did it give me an understanding for the villain, I almost felt bad for him, and even almost potentially caught myself agreeing with the take that he has. It reads, "A father is like God to his son. Even I, Simon, was no different in my youth. But the one who created me was no normal human. You're a failure too. The ability to read minds. Being abandoned in front of God meant the world's destruction. From then on, my life existed to make a world without lies. A world where no one betrays you and there's only truth, even if it's forced. Now the finale is here. Once the door is opened, it can't be closed. For humankind, I, Simon, gave up being human and decided to walk the path of immortality and truth. My body will be broken and reformed as the God that was torn apart. I leave this record in my last moments as a human." Simon Manus wants a world without lies. A place where only truth sees the light of day, which in theory sounds great. But what he forgets is that free will allows us to lie, to make your own decisions. Is a world without discrepancy and choice, even if morally wrong, a world worth living in? I would say no. Sometimes making the wrong choice is better than having no choice at all. And while a world without lies sounds perfect, it's not reality. And I think reality is what is lost in Simon's confession. Just the truth of the real world is that lying is okay sometimes. But not all of the collectibles have to be so serious and existential. Some of them can be really silly and quite fun. After defeating the first round of the Black Rabbit Brotherhood, you can find a newspaper clipping called "This Month's Trend: Stalker Masks." Up to this point, many of the human NPCs that we found wear animal masks. And why is that, you may ask? Not only is it a symbol of rank and prestige, but it was also a ritual to show off after you defeated a legendary rock titan. Now, what is a legendary rock titan, you may ask? I have no fucking clue, but it sounds sick, and you never would have known about it if you didn't stop and smell the roses. Not only that, but sometimes the writings can be a warning for what's ahead. For example, in Krot train station, you can find a passenger's note that warns P what may be ahead. If anyone finds this note, get out of the station and run. Be sure to steer clear of the waiting room. I saw a huge puppet smashing people to death in there. I locked the door, but I don't know if that'll work. At least it should stop people from randomly coming in. I'm going to die soon, so I want to help you, even if it's not much. Please survive. Anyone. Shortly after, we are introduced to our first mini-boss, described exactly as written. You can find all three of these examples all over Krot in many different ways, and it is just such a refreshing way to tell a story and build up your world without force-feeding it to you. Because for those of us that crave more content in our games, it's absolutely out there. And it's rich. I guarantee you I didn't read every single note or newspaper clipping, and the game doesn't force you to or punish you for not doing that. It's side content for a reason, for those of us that are curious, and thankfully it was something that wasn't lost in the Soulslike translation. We head back to Krot Hotel to discover it has been sacked, and Geppetto was kidnapped. Remember that cipher from earlier? Yeah, it was actually a huge misunderstanding. It was actually Geppetto in control of all the puppets, and Geppetto is the one that started the puppet frenzy. What a loser. Geppetto's meddling is also why P can lie. He wasn't programmed with the Grand Covenant, essentially a list of rules that all puppets had to follow. But now he's gone, and we still have to stop Simon Manus. Time to find that submarine. That's how Venini was gonna get us there, by the way. That dude is just loaded, and he was like, hey, you take my submarine to that island, and you do it hastily. With the help of Venini's fat wallet, we arrive at the Isle of the Alchemists, and on the shore, we are greeted by Sophia, who confesses to being a projection. Her real body lies in the Isle Tower after Simon exploited her to control the ergo, and connected her to a machine that spreads the petrification disease. Sophia reveals to P that she revived him to simply end her suffering. It's pretty metal if you ask me. The entire game we are learning how to make our own choices, how to become more human, just to be told that the person that we arguably trust the most has been using us, just like everybody else. You truly can't trust nobody but 3 people in this world, and that's me, myself, and I. And P, that's 4. After defeating the hardest boss in the game, Lexasia, and that's not up for debate, by the way, we find Sophia locked up in her Rapunzel tower and are presented with a choice. As I'm sure you all know by now, Lies of P is a dark retelling of Carlo Collodi's 1883 novel, The Adventures of Pinocchio. And while both stories share the same bones, the art of said works could not be more different. Pinocchio is the OG wooden puppet that dreams of becoming a real boy. And in Lies of P, you play as P, the advanced humanoid puppet with the unique ability to lie, something no other puppet can do. Similarly to Pinocchio's story, Lies of P is about becoming real, finding out what it means to be human, but in a much more darker, tragic sense. Some might even consider realistic. Pinocchio becomes real through honesty and virtue, and Lies of P completely subverts that idea. You become more human by lying, and are judged by the human characters for said lying. There's even a painting of the boy Carlo in Geppetto's office, and every time you lie in Lies of P, his nose gets longer. And actually, supposedly, I think if you lie a certain amount of times and you go back to the office, you can pick up the nose and you like get a weapon for it or something. Kind of a cool little tidbit there. Basically, the more you lie, the more human you become. Whereas Pinocchio is embarrassed by lying and told not to lie by characters like Geppetto. And speaking of Geppetto, he's back, but in a much different way. Geppetto is the kind-hearted father figure to Pinocchio, but in Lies of P, he's shrouded in mystery, and all of his actions are extremely questionable, and his morality is borderline evil to gray. His actions are so deeply tied to love and loss that you almost feel bad for the guy by the end. But starting the puppet frenzy and like killing a bunch of families of 5 is pretty messed up, so that's not very cool. And there are also plenty of other minor things that are similar, like the blue fairy being Sophia, a guide that helps Pinocchio and P grow and mature as they go along their journeys. Sophia and the blue fairy are kind of like our built-in cheerleaders. Jiminy is Gemini in Lies of P and acts as your mechanical companion that is kind of comic relief and also speaks way too much on long, unskippable train rides. The moral message of Pinocchio is to be honest, to be respectful and obedient, and that kindness will make you human. Whereas Lies of P tells us that lying can be mercy. Obedience is hollow, and to be human is to suffer and choose your path and go forward in spite of that, and to kind of just be okay with it. Lies of P made me think about this clip that I saw, and this woman was talking about dementia. She was giving a presentation on it, and she was talking about whether or not it's okay to lie to people in the throes of dementia. And the example that she gave was this older woman kept asking where her husband was. Is he in the other room? Was he coming home? Things like that. And in reality, her husband had passed away a long time ago, but she didn't remember. So what do you say? Do you say, no, your husband is dead. Your husband passed away 5 years ago. Or do you lie and say, oh yeah, he's out running errands. He went to see a movie. He's in the kitchen making dinner. Something like that. And in the video, the woman says, you absolutely 100% of the time lie. And I'll tell you why. Every time you tell that woman that her husband is dead, she has to relive that emotion for the first time every single time you remind her. It's an infinite loop of possibly one of the worst things that can happen to someone. Losing a partner over and over and over again like it's the first time. Or do you lie and spare them the pain that they've already grieved over? Yes, there is something to be said about being kind and honest, but sometimes you have to tap into that gray area for the betterment of someone in this case, or in Lies of P, the betterment of society. And what Lies of P does so beautifully is it reinforces that idea that it's okay to lie. It's okay. Sometimes it's okay. You can do it and not be a bad person. To me, that shit is real, man. And pulling that from the shadow of a kid's story that tells you lying is always bad is such a beautifully poetic thing to do that I've never really seen before. Turning a children's story on its head like that, but also keeping the same whimsical, childlike nature through the character of P and through the world that's being built is just incredible. Like, it's really astounding. Not only was Lies of P heavily inspired by Carlo Collodi's masterpiece, it was also inspired by the Belle Epoque era in Europe, which roughly translates to the Beautiful Era. The Beautiful Era was a period of French and European history that began after the end of the Franco-Prussian War in 1871 and continued until the outbreak of World War I. It was a period characterized by optimism, romanticism, economic prosperity, and technological innovations. France's cultural and artistic climate flourished, and so many pieces of literature, music, theater, and visual arts gained extensive recognition. I'm gonna butcher this guy's name, but director Choi Ji-won, I hope I said that right, stated that the Belle Epoque era was grossly misunderrepresented in video games. Having an established story foundation within the roots of the Belle Epoque era allowed the team to focus on their own interpretation and execution of the Lies of P story. The depiction of a prosperous city turned to rubble and despair is quite accurate to how the game is actually depicted. If Pinocchio is the yin, P is the yang. If the Belle Epoque era is the yin, Krot is the yang. Knowing that they had a very strong idea on the tone and sense of the world building in this game makes complete sense from how well it is executed. And to be honest, the world that surrounds P is probably one of, if not the greatest strengths Lies of P has. I chose to let Sophia rest, to fulfill her dream of being free. Having your own agency doesn't just mean revenge. It can also mean forgiveness, choosing the high road, and having Sophia's life in your hands allows you to make whatever choice you want. Eventually, P frees Geppetto and tells him that Simon Manus is going to activate some relic called the Arm of God, and that'll let him achieve divine power, apparently. P climbs to the top of the tower and fights the mutated Simon Manus. Victorious, P returns to Geppetto, who asks him to give him his mechanical heart. Like, what? You want P's heart? You have to go through me, buddy. Buddy old pal. He wants the mechanical heart to turn P into a human. But the catch is that he wants to turn him into his long-lost son, Carlo. So you have two choices. This is your final test. You agree, you give him your heart and you turn into Carlo, or you disagree, and we'll see what happens. There's very clearly a good and a bad ending here, so let's go over the bad one first. If P agrees, he dies, and Geppetto uses his heart to revive another puppet that is based on his son Carlo. And he died from the petrification disease, in case you were curious. Geppetto then orders Carlo to kill all of the surviving members of Krot Hotel, and replace him with puppets. Then Geppetto begins to rebuild the city for Carlo. Absolutely insane behavior here. If anyone unironically chose to give up their heart, seek help. The good ending is where you refuse. You want to remain your own person, to make your own decisions and defy your old papa. And with that decision, Geppetto activates the Nameless Puppet, our final boss fight in Lies of P. After beating him in 2 phases, Geppetto loses control of the Nameless Puppet, and it begins to act on its own and is about to kill P. And right before P dies, Geppetto steps in and saves the day, and he gets stabbed through the heart, where P sees the opening and takes out the Nameless Puppet. This sort of redeems Geppetto in a way, like, kind of, I don't know. I'm still very iffy on how I feel as Geppetto as a character. He's kind of fucked up, to be quite honest, but he does save us in the end, which I think the director was wanting to have him redeem himself a little bit, to realize his mistakes, for us to be a good boy. But he started the puppet frenzy. Families of 5. Minivans get killed. The transformation of P is not just emotional, but it's also physical. His features become much more human-like. His hair, for example, is much longer and straighter and it's got more volume. It was subtle, but by the end, it's quite a dramatic change, especially when you're looking at his backside the whole game. Pause. Ultimately, Lies of P is a challenge on what it means to be human. And it's not a deep think piece on how to be a better human and a puppet's guide to becoming a human. No, it's none of that. It's about having agency over your own life and making your own decisions. Whether good or bad, but having the bravery to do so and the confidence to defend that decision if necessary. Or changing it if need be. Each time I lied, it made me think of the 2 biggest takeaways of my life that my dad taught me. Make good decisions and think for yourself. Lies of P tells us that lying sometimes is okay, and sometimes it's the best decision you can make. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're trying to do the right thing. Lies of P is an incredible Souls-like, but it's much more than just a Souls-like. It's commentary on what it means to be human and insight on the flaws that come with having a soul. Straightforward doesn't mean simple by any means, and in this case, I think Lies of P tells its story beautifully and unravels the truth of a flawed society and the nature of humans perfectly. At this point, I still haven't played the DLC Overture, but I do want to. I've been making this video instead, so you're welcome. But if you'd like a little spin-off on Overture at some point, I wouldn't mind doing that. Testing the waters on a good old DLC. I'm gonna play it eventually, so if you want to see a little video on it, maybe a little part 2 action, you let me know down below. And they also announced a sequel that's coming out at some point. Don't know what that's gonna be about or when, but you bet your sweet bippy I'm gonna be there. Promise you that. But with that being said, I'm Zaldeyy. And today, tomorrow, yesterday, I want you to go out and make good decisions and think for yourself. Okay, bye.